Hello and welcome on France 24 and Radio France International for an interview with the President of Rwanda, Paul Kagame. With me for this interview, Alexandra Branjon from RFI.
Mr. President, hello.
Mr. President, you welcome, I quote you, as an important step, a recent report by French historians. It was commissioned by the French President, Emmanuel Macron, and the report concludes that France had, I quote, an overwhelming responsibility in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. The French president is scheduled to visit Rwanda in a few days. Is this a watershed moment in the relationship? Are we on the brink of full normalization between France and Rwanda?
To begin with all you said, I think this is a big step forward that is welcome by Rwanda and I guess by many in France, that we can have these facts, the truth established by independent people, by independent commissions, because there is a report by Declared and another commission on our side by Muse. There is a convergence as to the facts and evidence for what happened. And I think France and Rwanda have a chance now and a good basis on which to create a good relationship, as the case should have been. Then the rest we can leave it behind us, maybe not forget it, but forgive it, and be able to move forward. I think that's the most important thing. So I think we are really moving very well forward.
Mr. President, you talk about moving forward, convergence of facts. Now, this report concluded that France bears an overwhelming responsibility, but it does not conclude that France was complicit. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that conclusion?
I agree with many things that the two reports established. And I think more work can still be done moving forward. But the most important thing has been covered. And that is when you talk about the overwhelming responsibility, that is loaded. It's huge. It means a lot. So it's not up to me to conclude and say, this is what they should have said, or this is what it is. But it is something I can accommodate and say, okay, let's go with the most important thing that has been established by both, that overwhelming responsibility.
You say accommodate, but less than 10 years ago in an interview in 2014, you said France was not only complicit, but actively participated in the execution of the genocide. So what has changed between now and then?
For me, I'm entitled to my own opinion, because I also lived this situation. I was in it, and so I said what I said. I may even believe what I said at that time, even now, but we are talking about independent commissions that went into whatever they did, whether they, and the fact that you say they didn't come to a conclusion one way or the other, well, that's their problem. It's not mine.
The United States, United Nations, Belgium, the former colonial power, have all formally apologized for what they did or didn't do back in 1994. France hasn't done so. Would you like France to do so as a gesture of goodwill to build this new relationship that you're describing?
All that matter is upon France to decide what they think is best for them. The worst thing I can do, which I would not actually wish to do, is to ever ask anybody to apologize or to do this or that. I leave it to them. That's when it comes out honestly, genuinely, and people. It's the world that judges. It's not just me.
But it would be an important gesture. I understand you're not going to call for it, but if it happens, you would deem it as an important.
I think so. If anybody recognizes a problem and says and does things about it, I think that's the best outcome.
Right.
Absolutely, I would appreciate that.
Right. As you would appreciate a French ambassador going to Rwanda after years of not
Yes,
having-
yes, we are in a process of
You think
normalization.
this is on the horizon? I mean, very soon?
I would wish that was the case. Again, that's a matter of France to decide.
A few months ago, France had Félicien Kabuga arrested. He was the financier, if I may use that expression, of the genocide. Does this signal in your eyes that France is really, finally willing to go after the so-called génocidaire on its soil?
Well, I think it's a good start, but maybe more could be done. So my perspective is that we can encourage more good things to happen if France is willing to do that. There are still a number of genocide suspects here in France whose cases have not been handled the way they should.
I mean, let's take an example. Agatha Biarimana, the former wife of the killed president, she is in legal limbo here in France. Would you like France to kick her out, extradite her? I mean, this would obviously be a very symbolic gesture. It's been hanging over the relationship for years now.
I think we can continue to get things much better. Whether Agatha or other individuals, there are many here, and as I say,
but she would be an important one. You agree with that?
She's one of those. She's one of those. She's on the list. There is no question. On the long list, she's at the top. So, but France will decide what to do. I'm not going even to advise them what to do. I can only request them, maybe, and that should be done officially in the official communication. But I'm not going in any way to tell them what to do. I can only request them what to do.
Staying with justice and accountability, last month the Congolese Nobel Peace Prize winner, Denis Mukwege, was in Paris. He called and he asked France to help bring justice to those responsible of crimes in Eastern Congo. Some of them were committed by soldiers of the region, Congo's neighbors. That's according to UN experts. Would you agree to have Rwandan officers prosecuted for crimes committed in Eastern Congo in the wake of the genocide?
As you might be aware, mapping report has been extremely controversial and in actual fact highly disputed by people, whether others in Congo or in the neighboring countries. It was highly politicized. Mukwege becomes just a symbol or a tool of these forces you don't get to see, and he's made a Nobel laureate, and therefore he's told what to say. And by the way, there are also other reports that dispute and say completely the opposite.
The opposite, that there were no crimes committed
There were
in the
no
region?
crimes, yes.
In the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo?
Absolutely, and not by the individuals either talked about or by countries talked about. It's like it's the theory of double genocide that is playing out here.
In the east of Congo, the security situation continues to be very bad. Some say it continues to deteriorate. The Congolese government has decreed a state of siege in two areas, Ituri and North Kivu, for 30 days, maybe longer. Is this a good move? Do you agree with it?
The state of emergency, for me, it was like saying, there is a big problem here. Let's take measures that give us a good start to deal with it. This is why I'm saying it's one thing to establish the state of emergency. For me, I would do that if I were. But I would follow it up also with well thought out, planned actions to actually deal with in concrete terms, not to come and run over things again and then after 5 years you still have the same problem or even a much bigger problem. But we have also had the UN forces and the UN from outside for now 24 years. There are still these responsibilities of the world that are kept, silent or put underground. And nobody says, yeah, but what have you been there for 24 years? You went there to solve a problem. What happened?
It's a failure?
I think it's a big, big failure. It's an understatement to say it's a failure.
Now, talking about doing more, your country and Congo seem to have better relationships since President Tshisekedi was elected. You've both agreed to reinforce security at the borders between the two countries to tackle rebel groups that are operating in that region. How far are you in these talks? Are you talking about joint military operations, for instance?
We are still having a good discussion, but the most important thing here is at least there is that environment where we can talk to each other, which was lacking before. And then always people working together, they will find a solution.
But joint military operations could be envisaged.
That is, I guess that would not be out of the question. But it always depends on the situation at hand and what people see. Mm-hmm. Always the two sides will talk and see if that is going to work, what are the costs, or what are the benefits, and a decision can be made. I think here people need to be flexible.
Because, UN experts are saying that Rwandan troops are already intervening in the DRC and already conducting operations. Is that an example?
Yeah, but I wish they could go beyond that and ask themselves, meaning the UN, why would Rwanda have to go to Congo at all when they are the ones responsible for the situation?
Yes, but does that mean that you're acknowledging that Rwandan troops are in the DRC?
No, I'm acknowledging that the UN making that report is actually a failure in the Congo. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, total failure.
But so are Rwandan troops in the DRC as we speak?
No, if we were there, we wouldn't be failing. I assure you, we wouldn't fail to deal with the problem.
So coming back to Rwanda and your internal problems, as you mentioned them, Paul Rusesabagina is currently on trial in Kigali, and he's charged with 9 counts, including terrorism for his alleged support to an armed group. He claims that he never condoned violence.
Yes. One, he's not alone, by the way, in the trial. There are 20-something people who are being tried together with him. They were together in committing these crimes against Rwanda and Rwandans. They are all appearing in court. And in fact, some of them, a few of them, are giving overwhelming evidence against him. Mm-hmm. So I don't see why people make a lot of noise. He's in the court of law. He's not just being, hidden somewhere under arrest. He's in the court of law, like many others. Yes.
Well, you were saying, why do people make a lot of noise? Also, I think probably because the way he was arrested. I mean, He says he was tricked into coming to Rwanda. And
what's wrong with tricking a criminal you're looking for? When you get him, where do you put him? If it is in the court of law, I think that's okay.
Well, the US, the EU, others have expressed their concerns about him getting a fair trial. When they say this, they suspect that this is actually not the case because of the way he was tricked and because they don't think he will get a fair trial. You have to be concerned when you hear this.
Sure. I am calling for fair trial against him myself. So it's not UK or US or European Union. No. I want to see a fair trial myself. Why do you think being fair belongs to Europe or US or anybody else, not to us. Why? This is how people, you see, end up being caught up in some of these useless things, and they end up being racist. It's like the only thing to be fair in Rwanda or in Africa, it has to be supervised by Europe or US or some other place. No, absolutely not.
Well, maybe the concern is because several think tanks or organizations have accused your regime of suppressing all type of dissent. And I'll give you another example, the one of the arrest of the gospel singer, Kizito Mihigo, who became a critic of your regime. He was accused of inciting hatred, and he died in police custody. The official version is suicide, but human rights organizations are doubting that.
The concerns will be there, but who tells you I don't have those concerns myself? But everything is cleared through investigation and through the court of law.
So would you accept a probe? They're calling for an independent investigation.
Independent what? You mean we should always be having independent investigation for things that happen here in Paris or in France?
To finish, Mr. President, you've been head of state for 21 years. The next presidential elections are in 3 years.
Yes.
Will you be running?
You know, above all, I wish God continues to give me good health, right? That's at a personal level. The rest of politics, Rwandans will decide, and maybe I can also decide personally. I can decide even when Rwandans say, no, we still want you. That is something important. But I can say, you know what? I feel I need to go and do something else.
Mr. President, thank you very much for agreeing to this interview, and thank you to our listeners and viewers from France 24 and RFI, Radio France International.